it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today is my favorite day of the year because it is my best books of the year video. I'm so excited. We are going to be talking about my top 24 books of 2024 today. There's going to be no ranting, all positivity, just like the haters always want from me. I am taking my clocking in at the hater building card, ripping it up into little tiny shreds, and pushing it out the window because today we are just talking about all the books that I love the most. There's going to be 24 of them. It's freaking Christmas. Merry Christmas if you celebrate. I am so excited. Let's jump in. I'm gonna do this by genre, which I haven't done. I've done it ranked in order of like what I genuinely like the most. I've done it in random order. I don't know why this year something in me was like, do it by genre. I was also curious as to what do I enjoy the most, like how evenly are the genres split amongst my favorites of the year. And definitely the biggest category was horror. I have 10 of my top favorites from the horror genre, which is wild because it's not my most read genre. You would think like the more that you read of one genre, the more that you would have a chance of them being a favorite, but not so. I only read, I think like 52 horror books this year, and out of those 52, 10 of them made it into my favorite. So there's like a 20% chance every time I picked up a horror book this year that it was gonna be a favorite of all time. I also have 4 romances, which is crazy because I think I read less than 20 romances this year, and for 4 of them to be in my top favorites is wild. I only have 4 thrillers on this list, and I think I read 78. I read 78 thrillers in 2024. And only 4 of them made it to the top. I have 1 nonfiction, 2 fantasy, and 3 like literary general fiction type of vibes. So let's go ahead and jump in with the 1 nonfiction book that made it to my top favorites this year, and that is Cultish by Amanda Montell. I loved this book. We are talking about the language of fanaticism in this book. So it's not just about cults. It's actually relating cults to smaller, more insidious cultish everyday things that just have a rabid fan base or a certain level of fanaticism around them. And Amanda goes on to assess the language that creates buy-in from different groups of people, what makes people vulnerable to cults or cultish activities, etc., etc. It is so interesting. I could talk all day long about Amanda Montell's passion. I think it just really comes through so clear every time I read something from her, how passionate she is about what she's talking about. She also explains things in a very clear, very relatable way. It feels very unpretentious and digestible. She writes some of my favorite nonfiction, so it's no surprise that when I pick up a book from her, it's gonna end up in my top of the year. Now let's jump into fantasy. I cannot believe 2 of my top books are fantasy. I don't know if that's ever happened before, but I'm kind of edging my way into getting into fantasy, so yay for that. First up, we have the basic Fourth Wing. Sorry, I don't know why I feel like I have to apologize for this. I just loved it, okay? I just freaking loved Fourth Wing. I loved everything about it. If you don't know what this is about, somehow, if you live under a rock, except I didn't know what it was about before I picked it up either, so we are following our main character, Violet, who has always been raised thinking that she was going to be a scribe, but when she gets to picking her career and pursuing like university to follow that career, she is pushed into the career of being a writer. And when I say a writer, I mean a dragon writer. So she is really small. She deals with chronic pain, chronic illness. She's not really the stereotypical dragon writer that you would think of, but she goes on this journey to become that, and along the way, she not only builds bonds with her dragons, she also builds bonds with a villainous man, and he is very attractive and I love everything about him. The romance is amazing, the action is amazing. I felt very immersed in the world. It was just a wonderful reading experience that reminded me what it was like to be a kid voraciously reading a fantasy series, and I love when a book can replicate that feeling. I feel like I'm always chasing it, and I found it in Fourth Wing. And the other fantasy book that made it into my top of of the year is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is a very low stakes, like cozy fantasy book, and something about it, it just made me want to revel within the pages forever and ever and ever. I literally think I could have gone on reading this book forever. It has the coziest, most warm, inviting atmosphere. If you need something to read that will like relax you and transport you into another world, you have to read Legends and Lattes. It's so good. We are following a former bounty hunter, I guess, and she's ready to put down her sword and instead just live a quiet life. So she opens up a coffee shop in a small town, and we follow her and her sapphic romance as she does. It is very sweet, it's very heartwarming, but there's still a level of pacing. I feel like a lot of cozy books honestly just read pretty boring to me, and this one did not. There was a good level of action, great character development, perfect atmosphere. The vibes were just there the entire way through. I loved it. Next up, let's get into my thrillers. My thriller picks. I feel like I have been branded a thriller channel, even though I don't really find myself loving thrillers recently. It's like kind of ironic. I'm not trying to do a rebrand or anything. Like, I still love thrillers. I still read majority thrillers. I feel like it's just harder to find a really standout good one. I want to make a video about the Frida McFaddenification of thrillers, especially indie published thrillers, and how a lot of them just read with very, very little intention these days, especially in regards to mental health representation. That was the bulk of the issues that I had with the thrillers that I disliked this year. So maybe that'll be a future video. Maybe we'll get into some commentary. I don't know. Don't hold me to it, because every time I open my mouth, people seem to be upset. So we're just going to keep on the positivity train today, and we will talk about my top thrillers of 2024. The first of which is The Next Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine. Obviously, this is the sequel to The Last Mrs. Parrish, which is one of my favorite thrillers of all time. It is the bitch I'm gonna steal your life thriller. It is the rich people drama thriller. It is the summer thriller. It holds the title for so many of my favorite tropes, my favorite superlatives of the thriller genre. And how was I not gonna love the sequel? Like, it has the same exact energy, and falling into it was just like slipping into the most familiar, soft, warm bedding. I was like, oh yes, Liv Constantine, tell me a little drama-filled, scandalous story. And I ate up every single second of it. The twist, the character development, the way that it builds on the world that was created in the first book is phenomenal. If you haven't read this one yet, set it aside for summer 2025. You've got to read it. Next up, we have Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth. This is a thriller that is really character driven. It has amazing trauma and mental health representation, and it's about this group of girls who were raised in foster care, and it was a really dark, abusive situation, but no one knew because everything looked totally fine on the surface. Like, their foster mother was really good at like getting it together when the social workers would come by and do a check, but behind closed doors everything was a wreck, and things blow up when a body, literal bones, are found in the ground in the property where they were raised. And so all these questions start coming up around how these girls were treated within the foster home. We are trying to figure out who this body is. It's honestly less about the murderer and more about like who ended up dead here. What do the girls know about it? Obviously now they're like much older and have been through a lot of things and have a lot of defense mechanisms and secrets, etc. So what do the girls know, and ultimately who killed this person? And along the way, we're uncovering all the secrets and lies, all the trauma. We're processing it alongside them. We see how every character goes through their own journey with it. It's very high stakes. It's very emotional, but not in an overwhelming way. I feel like Sally Hepworth does a really great job of representing deep emotion, but not getting bogged down in it, because it still has that fast-paced, exciting thriller feel. It's just really well balanced, and I continue to absolutely love Sally Hepworth's work. Next up, we have Do What Godmother Says by L.S. Stratton. Oh my gosh, I loved the gothic vibes of this thriller. We're following a dual plot line. One plot line is in the past, in the 1920s, the Harlem Renaissance in Brooklyn, New York, and this young black artist is trying to come up. She's trying to get her big break, and she thinks that she does when she finds a wealthy white benefactor to take her under her wing. Then we're following the present day timeline in which our main character has a painting from this artist passed down to her. She tries to sell it, and when she does, very creepy things start happening around her. She feels threatened, people start dying, and she looks into the mysterious deaths that happened around the painting in the past as well. Some very eerie things come up. We see where the past and the present collide. We see these kind of like foiled narratives of both of these black women across time. There's beautiful social commentary in here, but again, really well balanced. It doesn't bog down the story at all. It doesn't feel literary. It still feels like a fast-paced thriller. Y'all know my whole deal is I love a thriller with something to say. The messaging in here is clear, it's concise, and there's like a depth to it. And at the same time, those twists will hit you back to back to back to back. I love everything I've read from Ella Stratton. Both of her books so far have been 5 stars for me, so I'm really looking forward to her future releases. She is like, I would call her a new favorite author. I don't even care that she only has 2 books out. I've given them both 5 stars and I'm obsessed with them. And then the last thriller that made it to my best of the year is What Happened to the Bennetts by Lisa Scottoline. This low-key reads like a Hallmark original. Like a Lifetime movie or something. I don't know. It's very like over the top, dramatic, like family in strife. But something about it read so genuine to me, and it's just very thrilling and like high octane. Like everything in this book felt like it happened so fast. We were on this like whirlwind traumatic journey with this family. They get into a car accident or like an incident on the road. I don't want to give away exactly what happens, and then from there it basically blows their entire lives up, and they have to go into witness protection, and then they feel like there's corruption and they don't know who to trust. It is basically about this family's undying love for each other to get them through every single obstacle that has presented, and all the different ways that their own personal defenses and fears and whatever come up and try to like stop them, and they just keep overcoming. I cried reading this book. It's about resiliency and, like I said, like family and fatherhood, and it's just so good. It's an emotional thriller, and I'm an emotional girl, so you know I'm gonna love it. But again, balance. It's fast-paced, it's twisty, it's exciting, but it has that emotional something that I'm looking for. Next up, let's get into the magical realism fiction, literary fiction type of vibes. We only have 3 of these, and they're all extremely different from each other. The first one you can probably guess is Expiration Dates by Rebecca Searle. Every year that Rebecca puts out a book, it ends up in my top favorites. I love the way that she does magical realism. Something about the metaphor of it all, the externalization, just really hits for me. And in Expiration Dates, we're following a woman who every time she gets in a relationship, she gets this little piece of paper, whether it's like in her mailbox or in her purse or like flying through the air in front of her, and it says the name of the next person that she's going to be in a relationship with and how long the relationship will last. So she basically doesn't have to do any of the guesswork of dating. She knows exactly what to expect until she receives a piece of paper with just a man's name on it. And she's like, okay, I've now unlocked free will. She now has to grapple with, what does this mean? Does this mean she's gonna die before the end of the relationship? Does it mean that this is finally her forever person? Or does this mean that fate is giving a chance for her to decide? I absolutely sobbed reading this book. I love the main character so much, and we're just with her every step of the way as she really tries to tap into what she wants, which she's never had the opportunity to do before. It's very emotionally impactful. It's exciting. There are a lot of like poignant moments in the book. It's very relatable and easy to read, which I think Rebecca Searle books always are. I loved it. Next up, we have something a little bit weirder, and that is Death Valley by Melissa Broder. This is about a woman who is processing grief for her father, for her husband, and their relationship, for her own just inner child stuff, a lot of grief showing up for her. So she's like, you know what, I need to get away to the desert. And she goes on a hike in the desert and she ends up crawling into this cactus, and she goes on this psychological, psychedelic journey through a cactus as she's processing grief and heavy emotion. And then she gets stuck in the cactus and it becomes this like fight for survival in the desert, which is kind of like what it's like to process grief. If you've ever been there, then you know what I'm talking about. Talks about emotional processing in a way that feels so visceral and so real, but also externalized with enough distance that the metaphor is tangible. I hope that makes sense. Again, I felt really, really close to this main character, and rooting for her and seeing her little sparks of resilience really kept me reading through the book. It's also very darkly funny. I feel like Melissa Broder must cope with humor because it's a very heavy book, but it doesn't feel that way because of the humor that she imbues throughout. It's just kind of everything. It's funny, it's dark, it's emotional, it's sad, it's thrilling, it has an element of horror with the survival of it all. It's so well done. And the last book that I have in my little general fiction category is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one was so good. I can't believe that I put off reading it, and I will never do that again. The next time a TJR book comes out, I'm just reading it immediately. You can't listen to the bad reviews when you love TJR. Like, she just knows how to write a very flawed, imperfect, and genuinely real female lead, and that is exactly who Carrie Soto is in this book. She's a retired tennis star, but now the new young gun on the tennis scene is taking away all her titles, and she doesn't like that because that's the only thing that she really has in her life. She has money, but not much else other than her titles. So she decides she's coming out of retirement and she's going to take back her titles again, but she's significantly older. The press does not like her. She's kind of like a Tanya Harding type within the press. So we follow her journey to ingratiate herself to the public, win back her titles, and maybe find herself along the way. It's emotional. It says a lot about being a woman in the world, but more specifically in a public space and in sports, which I have never been interested in sports, but I was very interested in the like politics of tennis as I was reading this book. I would say if you like the movie Challengers, you're gonna like this book. I would say if you got weirdly obsessed with the Olympics this year, you would really like this book, because I was reading this throughout the time that I watched Challengers and was obsessed with the Olympics, and it was just like the perfect atmosphere, I guess, for reading this book. Also, Taylor Jenkins Reid is just incredible at a character study book. It's also set in like the 90s-ish time, which I really liked, that nostalgic setting. It was just great. Next up, let's get into my romances of my best books of 2024, and we will end off with my big category, which is horror. Probably my top favorite romance of the year is not just one book, it's a little series, but I'm only going to talk about the first one, and that is the Witsex series by Ashley N. Rostick. The first book is called Find Me, and we are following a girl whose entire family was murdered by a serial killer, and now he is on the run looking for her. So she is constantly paranoid, constantly vigilant, like looking around for this crazy stalker serial killer man to might come and get her. And she can protect herself, like she's a boss bitch, but the good thing is that she doesn't always have to, because she has a group of 4 hot brothers living next door to her that are very willing to protect her and keep her safe and keep her warm in the long nights. So it is a like polycule romance between 4 men and 1 woman. It's reverse harem vibes, and it's also a very thrilling, very exciting serial killer horror kind of plot. The thrilling plot in here like is genuinely so great. It's not just a side line thing for the romance, and I loved the trauma-informed representation in here. I feel like it's done really well. Sometimes our main character is a little bit pick-me and a little bit annoying, but honestly I feel like it says a lot that she has those elements to her character, and it still is one of my favorites of the year because of how much I loved the romance, the talk of trauma, the exciting plot. Like, I was voraciously reading these books. As soon as I finished one, the next one was on deck. I binged this series and I absolutely loved it. Next up, we have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Oh my god, this book is amazing. When I read this book, I literally thought to myself, I am not a good partner. Like, I was inspired to be a better partner by reading this book and seeing how these characters treat each other. Like, they're literally not even real, but the emotional development and intention that was put behind these characters breaking down their own defenses, getting to know themselves for the betterment of the relationship was genuinely one of the most beautiful things I've ever read. Like, I cannot speak highly enough about this book. Ins and outs of this relationship, what you can learn from it in a real sense is literally like going to couples therapy. Like, it is so good. It's about two doctors. They get off on the wrong foot. The woman is initially really defensive. She's post-divorce, so we understand. She's been in a place of constriction. She needs to be in this defensive place to protect herself. But then she starts like softening as she gets to know this man, and she realizes like maybe he genuinely has her best interests at heart or whatever. I don't know, y'all. It's very sweet, and I'm gonna go now. It like makes me shy. Like, that book literally makes me blush. Like, it is genuinely a gorgeous book. Next up, we knew this one was gonna be on my list. A Funny Story by Emily Henry. So iconic, so adorable. We are following two people who just got out of long-term relationships, so their living situations are fucked because their partners are kicking them out of the house, and coincidentally, their partners are now in a relationship with each other. So they just decide, hey, we're both fucked. You want to move in together and support each other through this time. And so they end up living together, and over the course of time developing this bond and relationship that turns into more and more and more. Even though they're pretty stark opposites, like type A, girly and very relaxed, go with the flow boy. I love the boy in this book. I know a lot of people think like he's just a degenerate stoner that gives like homeless vibes. I don't know how to tell y'all that that is my type. Like, he's obviously not homeless, like he has a home, and he's not a degenerate, like he has a job, but like he's just got long hair and is a little dirty and like smokes a lot of weed, and like, how are y'all not on this vibe? Like, I don't understand the criticism for this main male character because he's literally probably the most attractive male love interest I maybe have ever read. Like, he is my type to a T because he's like that. He's like, I'm gritty, I'm a man, but he's also like, oh my god, I'm emotional, like I'm gonna cry to a rom-com. Like, that is who I need. I need a sensitive, doe-eyed little freak. That is who I'm looking for, and that is who we have found in Funny Story. Again, similar to Yours Truly, the emotional development and the individual development of the characters throughout the relationship really lends itself to a beautiful arc throughout the story. I just love it. And the vibes. Oh, this book is vibey. It's giving spring. Y'all get ready for my spring recommendation videos. I'm gonna be talking about this one. Emily Henry can do no wrong. Like, I know she's like one of those basic authors that everybody reads, but it's like for good reason, you know? Like, she is amazing. And the last romance that I have in my best of 2024 is This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan. Y'all, I'm so sold on Kennedy Ryan. I'm obsessed with her now. This book has everything. First, we're following a woman within a marriage, and it's low-key for the first like quarter of this book giving thriller, because we find out that her marriage is a train wreck and there's actually some like illegal, high stakes, scary shit going on. So we see her through this like thriller plot, and then there's this huge chunk of the book, probably like 100 pages, that she is single and she's just working on herself and she's finding herself, and it's a love story of a woman falling in love with herself. And then the last half, she meets a man and she starts to bring in this new love for herself and knowledge and emotional development to this new relationship with this guy, and this beautiful relationship just blossoms, and it is gorgeous. It is so, like, I was gonna say, it feels like an honor to read. It does feel like an honor to read. Like, this main character literally feels like a real life woman. It feels like she's letting me into her life and her world, and I get to see it and I get to be a part of it. Obviously she's fake, she is a fictional character, but I cannot tell you the genuineness with which this character reads like a real person. Like, in Funny Story and in Yours Truly, like, it's still kind of rom-com-y, you know? It feels like there's a little like over-the-top kitschiness at certain points to lend to the atmosphere. This book does not feel like that. It is so viscerally real. I kept forgetting that this woman is not a real person, and I think that is masterful. It's one of my favorite romances, not just of this year, of all time. I'm obsessed. Okay, it's getting dark. It's getting spooky. Let's see if we can get into all 10 of my favorite horror books of 2024 before the sun goes down. We will start out with Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. Oh my God, I love this book. I love this book. It has so much that just viscerally gets me. First off, we're following a creepy child. I love a creepy kid trope, and this little girl sees a demon at night, and the demon is other mommy, and other mommy be asking, can I come into your heart? So I'm really scared of that. And so is Bella, and so are her parents. So her parents are like, okay, this other mommy thing, like, we've got to figure it out. And thus ensues a very poltergeist-like story where they're trying to eradicate this demon from attacking their daughter and taking her away or possessing her. And along the way, we are unpacking basically generational trauma. Everything's a metaphor for generational trauma, but it's in such a digestible way and also such a way of effective horror. You're so ingratiated to the family and invested in their coming together, but at the same time, you understand the individual reasons that they have for pulling apart. I think that is such a masterful way of getting into the mental health of every single one of the characters. It just unfolds so well over the course of the book. The pacing is perfect. I wouldn't change one thing about this book. I literally think the ending was perfect. I think the entire story was perfect. I think the characters are perfect. I am obsessed with Incidents Around the House. Josh Malerman, you've done it again. Next up, let's talk about Come Closer by Sarah Gran. This is another book about possible possession. We're following a woman in the 90s. It has like a very much like Friends feel, because we are following a woman who lives this very upper middle class life in Manhattan. Like, she's very much like a Rachel Green. It's basically, what if Rachel Green started wondering if she was possessed? What would she do about it? That is what this main character is going through, and we follow her at first just wondering like, what's going on with me? And then escalating to looking for means to escape what's happening to her, or wondering about the origins of what's happening to her. It's this really haunting, creeping feeling over the course of the book, and ultimately it is all a metaphor for some feminist commentary that I really deeply enjoyed. I don't think the commentary was too heavy-handed, but I think it was just enough. I think the atmosphere and the character development drives the book, and it was incredible. This is another horror book that I just wouldn't change a thing about. I read it, and when I closed it, I wish that I wrote it. It was that masterful. Next up, we have one that I've talked about a ton this year since I read it last month. I cannot shut up about it, and that is Rest Stop by Nat Cassidy. This is just a little slasher novella, or at least that's what I thought going in, and the probably like first 70% is that it is darkly funny slasher vibes about this man who gets trapped in a gas station bathroom, and he is then tormented by his captor. It is dark, it is crazy, it is off the wall, but the whole time we're kind of wondering like, what is the motivation for this? And when we find out and we kind of like unlock this metaphor for religious trauma and how it exists in the state of the world right now, and the implications of that, it is so much deeper than you originally think it's gonna be. I loved that like twist, the like shift in pacing and meaning of the book. It was just so good. It took this from being like a 4-star really fun horror book to a 5-star favorite of all time horror masterpiece. Another novella that I just could not shut up about this year is Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. We are following a sapphic couple in this book. Really, the main character is one woman in this couple who has historically been with men, and something about this woman just like caught her eye. She unlocks these gay little feelings in herself, and it's scary, but it feels good and it feels exciting, and it's so atmospheric. It's like this lesbian cottagecore dream sequence for the first 50 or so pages of the book, but then slowly over time, this creeping, haunting feeling comes in and we start to doubt the relationship. And when it all falls apart and comes to a head, it is crazy. I guarantee you, you will not see where this is going, but you will feel the tension and suspense of it throughout the entire thing. The dissonance and the juxtaposition of like this beautiful atmosphere and these horrid, nauseous feelings that something is going to go wrong is such effective horror. The body horror at the end is crazy. The relationship dynamics are wild. Everything about it is like exactly what I wanted in a horror book. The vibes, the character-driven nature of it, the gay vibes, you win with your gay stuff, like that. And the body horror, like this is a recipe for Hailey's favorite and she's done it. Next up, we have another lesbian horror book, and that is My Darling Dreadful Thing by Joanna Van Veen. This was an incredible debut. I actually could not believe this was a debut. It's so good. And we're following a girl who has always been the creator of these seances for her mother, and she just kind of like sold people on these seances. It's how her and her mother have made their living, but they're mostly fake. And I say mostly because she does have a spirit companion who is this like ghost of a woman that she has this very weird and meshed relationship with. And when that relationship is threatened, when she starts to fall for one of the wealthy female patrons of the seance, everything is going awry, okay? We follow how these different relationship dynamics shift. It's about the mother wound, it's about generational trauma, but it's also about queerness and developing bonds with someone who has gone through something similar to you. It has this beautiful gothic atmosphere and writing style. It's about love, but kind of like the horrifying side of love, and I really thought that was just so effective. I highlighted so much of this book. I enjoyed it the whole way through. It's so good. Next up, let's talk about Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. This beautiful red sprayed edged book. I love it. This is such an incredible book. Okay, we are basically following three things within this book about a horror movie. We're following the original screenplay of this cult horror like staple that the whole like horror movie community is obsessed with. We're following the original screenplay, the events that happened when it was first filmed, which every actor that was in it has subsequently died since filming, and we're following the big Hollywood reboot that it's getting now, where the one surviving cast member has a reprising of his role. And we're following all the things that go wrong. Feels really trippy. You get lost in space and time wondering where did what happen in which timeline and how does it overlap and what is real and what is fake and what does it all mean. It is very conceptual, very like hypnotic even, but it's also very rooted in this sense of our main character's psyche driving the story, like what it has done to this person to live through all of these different timelines. The audiobook for it is absolutely incredible. The production value is insane. The conclusion of this book is insane. The whole experience of it was just 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. Next up, we have We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kleiwer, and this is incredible. It's about a sapphic couple who just moved into this house and their intention is to flip it, but one day the people who used to live there show up and they're like, hey, like, I used to live here. Can I like show my kids around where I grew up? And the one woman who answers the door is like, fuck, I'm such a people pleaser. Like, I wish my partner was here to turn these people away, but she's not. So like, sure, yeah, whatever, fuck it. Just like come in and make it quick. But then they won't leave. And things go off from there. Basically, every creepy thing you've ever gone into a Reddit deep dive on and worried about happening to you, that is what happens to this woman in this book. It is wild. We get like little pieces of lore and pieces of media in between each chapter that kind of like leave us little breadcrumbs so we can figure out what's happening. But it has a very similar feeling to Horror Movie where it's just like trippy and weird and you're losing yourself in space and time. That is some of the most horrifying stuff to me. Like, how am I losing my sense of reality just from reading words on a page? incredible. Getting into my last few favorites here, we have Good Girls Don't Die by, I almost said Emily Henry, by Christina Henry. Emily Henry was earlier, and I don't believe there's a relation here, but this book follows 3 women in very distinct timelines, okay? One girl is like in a Stepford Wives, like fake suburban simulation, and she's being tormented and possibly hunted down and killed. The next girl is in a Friday the 13th cabin style slasher, and the last girl is trapped in this Hunger Games-esque dystopian situation where all women in this society are made to be pit against each other. And we are trying to figure out, how do all 3 of these storylines overlap? What is going to happen to these 3 of them? Are they going to all survive? Are they in separate worlds, or are they in the same place? Like, what is happening? How is this all connected? The commentary in here is amazing. Each individual plot is so exciting in its own right. And then when they all combine, it's like this explosion of amazingness. I loved the strong female leads that drive the story. I loved, like I said, the ending and just the like big reveal of it all. I thought it was so fun, but also meaningful. It read really fast and easy, but at the same time it's like, no, but this is like real, you know, like this is speaking to real life. It was just very well balanced. Next up, I saved my top 2 in this category for last because these 2 truly are just a little bit different than everything else on this list. We have How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive by Craig DeLuey, and this book is for horror movie lovers. If you love horror movies, you're gonna love this. This is about a weird, haunted, possessed camera, and when this horror movie director discovers this camera that had previously filmed a movie where the entire cast and crew was killed and it happened on film, he and his little crazy brain are like, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna take this camera and I'm gonna make a movie with it. But every time he shoots someone with the camera, they end up dying. So it's like a slasher through the lens of a camera. It kind of gives like Final Destination vibes. And simultaneously, we're not only following this crazed horror director, we're also following his final girl as she is working through kind of like the ethics of horror, where her place is in horror, and how the genre sees her. It's very interesting commentary through this character study. I think she is such a compelling character. Everything also takes place in like the golden age of slashers in the 80s. It's so fun to read. At the same time that it's like darkly funny and referential and fun and filled with these horror tropey things, it's also like deeply meaningful. I love the reflections on the horror genre that happen within this book. I think it's just really well-rounded. It has everything that I could ever want, and because this is written with horror movie lovers in mind, and I have been horror movie obsessed since I was a literal child, this just hit different for me. I'm obsessed with it. And my last book that I have to talk to you about of my best books of 2024 is my hands down best book of the year, So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. We all knew this was coming, okay? Like, I'm sure you knew that this was coming. This book is incredible. Oh my god, I had a full-blown breakdown reading this book. It's so good. We're following these best friends who are kind of polar opposites, and they go on this snowy, isolated cabin vacation together for one of their birthdays. They end up grappling with their own friendship and also their separate relationships to their male partners while they're on this trip. And as they're working through that, they end up going to this bar and they meet this guy, and this guy's like, hey, you should come to this party. And they're like, you know what? We're on this vacation, you only live once, whatever, we're both going through it, let's just go let off some steam at this party. Little do they know, it's a vampire orgy, and they get caught up in the vampire orgy, and then things go off from there. It's a whole journey of self-discovery, how you show up in relationships, feminist commentary, generational commentary, all of these different things through the metaphor of vampirism. It's dark, it's funny, it's meaningful, it's poignant, it's scary, it's intense. It's so many different things rolled up into this very easy to read, perfectly paced, relatable narrative. I cannot sing high enough praises for Rachel Harrison. I think she really defines horror as it should be right now. Like, she has her finger on the pulse of what will land for women in horror. I just really think that if you're a woman and you love horror books and you're not reading Rachel Harrison, you're missing out on a lot. Not every horror book that I read this year hit in the way of this, and she's so consistent. Like, a lot of her books often hit that way for me. So I just love this book and I just want everyone to read it. Please go read it. It's my best book of the year and I love it so much. We beat the sun. It's literally a tiny little sliver outside my window right now, but we've done it. I have now let you guys know about my top 24 books of 2024. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you read all of these because I genuinely love them all so much. Thank you so much for watching this video, for taking the time out of your day, especially if it's on Christmas, to spend some time with me and hear a little bit about my favorite literature of the year. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thank you guys again so much for watching. Have such a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, whatever you celebrate, and an amazing new year. I will see you guys in 2025. Thank you so much for being a part of Happy Hailey Days. If you don't know, I posted a video every single day of this December leading up to today, the 25th, with my best books of the year as the finale. If you missed any of those videos, I will link the playlist down below so you can have a Happy Hailey Days over the next few days as we're all, like, hopefully off work and rotting on the couch eating turkey sandwiches. Enjoy that. Enjoy the content. Enjoy your life. I love you guys so much. Happy New Year. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.